Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story begins on a rainy afternoon in a city where people rushed past each other without ever really looking. Luxury cars splashed water onto broken sidewalks, and tall glass buildings reflected a life that felt completely unreachable to the people living at street level. Among them was a woman named Sarah, a poor, single mother holding the hand of her 6-year-old son, Leo. Her shoes were worn out, her jacket thin, and her eyes carried the kind of tiredness that sleep alone could never fix. Sarah hadn't always lived like this. Life had once been simple. She had a small home, a loving husband, and dreams that felt close enough to touch. But illness came quietly, stole her husband slowly, and left her with hospital bills, debts, and a child who depended on her for everything. She worked 2 jobs, cleaned houses during the day, and waited tables at night. Still, it was never enough. That afternoon, she had just been told her electricity would be cut off if she didn't pay by the next morning. Across the street, stepping out of a black luxury car, was Daniel Whitmore, a billionaire known not only for his wealth, but for his sharp mind and guarded heart. Daniel believed money solved problems, but people often disappointed. Years of betrayal and fake smiles had built walls around him. He trusted numbers more than emotions and contracts more than promises. As Daniel walked toward a high-end cafe for a business meeting, he noticed Sarah struggling to calm Leo, who was hungry and cold. The boy stared at the cafe window, eyes fixed on pastries and warm food. Sarah gently pulled him closer and whispered that they would eat later, trying to hide the crack in her voice. Something about that moment stopped Daniel. Maybe it was the way the child didn't cry, or the way the mother tried so hard to stay strong. Against his usual instinct, Daniel approached them. Sarah immediately tensed, used to people either ignoring her or judging her. Daniel spoke calmly and asked if everything was okay. Sarah hesitated, but finally admitted they were just having a hard day. Daniel looked at Leo, then back at Sarah, and without fully understanding why, he made a decision that even surprised himself. He took out his credit card and held it out to her. He told her she could use it for 24 hours. No limits, no questions. He said it wasn't a test, and he didn't want anything in return. He simply asked her to return it the next day at the same place. Sarah froze. Her first instinct was to refuse. People didn't do things like this without expecting something back, but when she looked at Leo's thin face and remembered the electricity notice folded in her pocket, her pride finally gave way to survival. With shaking hands, she accepted the card, tears welling in her eyes as she thanked him over and over. Daniel walked away, unsure of what he had just done, telling himself it was just money and he could afford it. But deep down, he wondered what kind of choices someone would make when given sudden access to wealth. For Sarah, the card felt heavy in her hand, not because of its value, but because of the responsibility it carried. That night, she didn't rush to buy expensive clothes or luxury items. Instead, she took Leo to a small grocery store. She filled the cart with healthy food, fresh fruits, vegetables, and ingredients she hadn't been able to afford in months. Leo smiled more that evening than he had in weeks. Next, Sarah went to the utility office and paid the overdue bill, making sure the lights would stay on. She paid part of her rent in advance, so she wouldn't live in constant fear of eviction. She even bought Leo a warm jacket and proper shoes. Nothing fancy, just what he truly needed. Later that night, Sarah sat on her bed holding the card, thinking deeply. She could change her life in one day if she wanted to, but instead of chasing comfort, she thought about dignity. She remembered how many times people had looked at her with pity or suspicion. She didn't want that anymore. The next morning, Sarah woke up early and did something unexpected. She went to a local community center and paid for childcare services. For several months, allowing her to work better hours, she enrolled in a short vocational course she had once dreamed of taking but could never afford. Then she visited a small secondhand bookstore and bought children's books for Leo and donated others to the Center for Kids who had nothing to read. With the remaining money, Sarah went to a modest restaurant and paid for meals for several homeless families, leaving quietly before anyone could thank her. To her, kindness felt more powerful when it didn't demand recognition. When the 24 hours were almost over, Sarah carefully placed the credit card back into its envelope. She didn't spend anywhere near the limit. What she carried with her instead was something heavier. Gratitude mixed with responsibility. The next afternoon, Daniel returned to the same spot, not sure what he expected. He half prepared himself for disappointment, imagining luxury shopping, bags or excuses. When Sarah arrived, she looked different. Not richer, but lighter. Her posture was straighter, her eyes calmer. She handed him the card and quietly explained everything she had done. She showed him receipts, not to prove anything, but to be transparent. She thanked him again, not as a beggar, but as a person whose life had been given a chance to breathe. Daniel listened in silence. With every word, Something inside him cracked. He had given the card thinking money would reveal character. What he hadn't expected was to see his own reflection in her choices. Sarah had more integrity with one day of access to wealth than many people he knew who had it their entire lives. As Sarah turned to leave, Daniel felt his throat tighten. For the first time in years, tears filled his eyes. He realized he had spent his life protecting his wealth, but she had used it to protect her child, her future, and her dignity. He stopped her and told her this wasn't the end. He offered her a job in one of his company's community programs, not as charity, but as opportunity. A position where her experience and values could help others like her. Sarah was overwhelmed. But this time, the tears she shed were full of hope. Daniel walked away that day, changed. Not because he had helped someone, but because someone had reminded him that true wealth isn't about how much you can spend in 24 hours. It's about how much good you choose to do when no one is watching. And sometimes, the smallest act of trust can return with a lesson so powerful, it brings even a billionaire to tears.